I think we have a standard on how we measure quality in pharmaceutical products. And I think we should have the right standards on how we measure our emissions, our businesses, our sustainability. I would welcome this. I know we're leaders in this space, and I would certainly welcome this kind of move to ensure that we're held to the highest standards.
Welcome to the Sustainable Edge, your podcast that moves sustainability beyond talk. You get to hear sharp perspectives and leave with insights you can put into action. I'm your host, Joachim Nahum, and this podcast is produced by Position Green. Welcome back to Sustainable Edge, where we strip away the noise around ESG and look at what actually drives decarbonization in the real economy. If there's one theme we return to often, it's that climate action isn't abstract. It's granular. It's about understanding industries, products, and supply chains at a level where decisions truly matter. And it's about the commercial logic. Why reducing emissions increasingly makes sense for competitiveness, resilience, and long-term value creation. Few sectors underline this tension as clearly as healthcare and pharma. On the one hand, they deliver life-saving products and are built on science, precision, and trust. On the other, the sector faces growing ESG scrutiny, from the carbon footprint of manufacturing and supply chains to concerns about waste, chemicals, pricing, and broader industry controversies. The pressure is rising not just to innovate medically, but to do so responsibly and transparently. That's why today's conversation is so timely. Bespak, long recognized for its expertise in drug delivery services, has recently undergone a major strategic shift, separating from Recipharm to become an independent company. That independence brings both opportunity and accountability. The opportunity to accelerate innovation and the responsibility to rethink how essential products like inhalers can be redesigned for a low carbon future without compromising patient safety. Today, I'm joined by Chris Hirst, the CEO of Bespak, to unpack this transformation. We'll discuss how the company is reducing its environmental footprint, how innovation and cross-industry collaboration are reshaping the future of climate-friendly healthcare products, and how new global regulations are influencing strategy and R&D. We'll also dive into the customer expectations as pharma and healthcare systems face increasing pressure to decarbonize their supply chains. And what does it take culturally to lead a company through both strategic and sustainability transition? Chris, welcome to Sustainable Edge.
Thank you for having me.
Great, and you're joining us. You're headquartered outside of Manchester. I've had the great pleasure of visiting you there.
That's right, about half an hour from Manchester Airport in the rolling Cheshire countryside.
Great. And listen, Chris, we spoke about sort of your sector, your industry. Tell us a little bit more sort of who you are in this industry and what it is that you do in this industry as a company.
I mean, you gave a very good tee off into the company. I think Bespak is well known in the industry, has a long history in respiratory and nasal products, a real deep legacy. And you were correct, we carved out of Recipharm last year. We brought together the Bespak businesses as we see now. And that kind of carve out has really allowed us to kind of move faster, make decisions quicker, really articulate our vision and our mission much clearer to our customers and to our workforce. And today we're specialized again in respiratory and nasal products. So you mentioned the healthcare sector there, and I think the healthcare sector for me, it has always been about improving and saving lives. And I think today the environmental footprint and our impact on the planet is now part of that same responsibility. I think the reducing the environmental impacts is really helping the planet, and it's improving the outcomes for our patients as well. Our patients have lung conditions which are worsened by poor air quality. So this kind of double-edged responsibility that we see as being a player in this sector.
And I'm one of them. As someone with asthma, I've been using inhalers from I was very young. And it's one of these occasions where you don't always know who does what in this product, right? You have an inhaler, there are different components. Can you just educate our listeners and viewers here again exactly on what it is you do when it comes to these type of products, and where is the carbon emission saving opportunity?
We manufacture many different kinds of products, but I'll focus in on one that everyone will know. It's the kind of, it used to be called the puffer when I was at school. So it's the metered dose or pressurized metered dose inhaler. So this is made up of a formulation inside a pressurized can, and that formulation is mixed with a propellant gas that pushes that active ingredient into your lungs. That propellant gas has a high carbon footprint. It's got what we call a high global warming potential. And our mission, along with our customers, collaborators, partners, is to reduce the carbon impact of that gas. So we're shifting to lower carbon materials there. But like I say, we're collaborating right across the supply chain to do this. So right from the can suppliers, we manufacture the valve that delivers the dose. We manufacture the formulation. We do the fill finish all in our company. But then we're working with the customers who own the products and are getting the products into the patient's hands. So this collaboration goes right across the business. And this is probably one of our most urgent missions within the business now.
If we come back to your product, Chris, and the emissions profile, where is the opportunity? Is it in the manufacturing together with your suppliers? Is there a technological breakthrough? You've mentioned that you have a technology when it comes to the valve and sort of making this less emissions intensive. Maybe just help our listeners to go even more granular here. They're not experts in this space, but to understand exactly where is the opportunity? Where do you reduce emissions in the life cycle of your product or product?
I'll give you a quick example. In the UK, the National Health Service, around 3% of the National Health Service emissions are due to the propellants and anesthetic gases that they use. The propellant gases in the inhalers. That's huge. In comparison, it's about equivalent to the commuting of 1.4 million NHS workers each year. So you get this kind of sense of the impact that this gas has just on the UK. And it's this gas inside the inhaler, like I say, that propels your active ingredient into your lungs. It's this propellant we can change. And by changing this, we would have a significant impact on the emissions that the National Health Service in UK, for example. And then you roll that to all global health services, it's pretty big.
Or if we look at the UK's own commitments in terms of reducing emissions and what this makes up of the UK economy and emissions profile, there's also an opportunity for the country, not just the industries here, to reduce their emissions. So
and these are huge things, but it's also in the detail. It's not just one big move that we're making, although this is the spearhead of what we're working in the in the industry. It's smaller things as well. So we want to know our products intimately. Everything that we make, we want to know it intimately. And we've been running life cycle assessments on our products to really try and find the hotspots, the carbon hotspots, if you like, on our products and our supply chain, and then start to offer solutions that our customers can engage in. How can we go from more sustainable aluminium, other different solutions that come in through these assessments. So we're really getting intimate with our products and finding ways that we can improve what we do now through kind of small innovation, if you like, as well as the kind of the larger impact activities that we're focusing on.
Right. And when you say hotspots, one example that would be the use of materials. Finding, again, you're depending on other industries to come up with materials that are less carbon intensive. And you mentioned aluminum being one of them.
Yeah, I mean, in the healthcare or in the pharmaceutical sector, it is challenging to change materials. Materials are registered with a product. All the data and safety data, efficacy data is there with the product. And so to make a change of material is a challenging activity for a pharmaceutical product. But the challenge nonetheless needs to be taken. And so this intimacy with our product and intimacy with the supply chain on how we can make these changes is proving kind of really useful, I think, and really forward thinking.
And if we think of what is the carbon reduction opportunity here, if we try to put it in some numbers here, you obviously contribute to millions of products, as I understand. There, you sort of talking about millions of patients, but also millions of products. And if we multiply that by emissions per product, we're talking about potentially some big savings here. Can you give us some numbers on sort of the products and the savings? What's the opportunity for you and your industry?
So our business contributes to hundreds of millions of devices that are used every year by patients.
I stand corrected. That's a big number.
Yeah. So we touch a lot of the globe, a significant part of the globe with the products that we either manufacture fully or contribute in some way through formulation or through device componentry, etc. So hundreds of millions of patients are using the products that we make, and so the gases in there have a significant global warming potential, over 1,000 times compared to carbon dioxide, and we're going to be bringing that right down to kind of the single figures or zero in some cases. So a material change, a material impact on the products that go out to the patients.
And maybe can you just take our listeners through of how do you approach this? Obviously, a company like yours is based on science, but there's also manufacturing, there are commercial considerations. So like when you're talking about, and as I said in my introduction, decarbonization, I was very much about taking it from the sort of abstract ideas of net zero or large corporate commitments that not always backed up by the details. But in your case, it's very specific relating to products. And just take us through a little bit, like what is your sort of science and method or approach here? Like how do you go about this?
Fundamentally, there are products on the market that work for patients today. Those products that have a higher carbon impact than we would like, we need to change the formulations in those products to lower that carbon impact, but maintaining the same efficacy and the same quality. So there's a kind of, again, this kind of dual responsibility of accessibility to low carbon products that really work, that are proven to work, but how do we kind of innovate around what our patients need or our customers' patients need? How do we innovate around that to create a lower carbon product? So it's in the formulation, it's in the materials, it's in the methods of manufacturing. So it's quite a holistic approach, always focused on having that high quality, efficacious medicine that our patients are using today.
And from a commercial perspective, because when you mention customers here, we are talking in many cases of large pharmaceutical companies who produce kind of the end product to consumers, and you contribute to that product. But how much of this decarbonization matters from a commercial perspective in terms of you being competitive with your customers? Is that something they're asking for? Are you doing this also because it makes you more competitive and would be a preferred supplier to some of the big pharma companies? You can mention which one there are, but as I understand, you work with some of the very largest.
We work, our customers are across the board, from the biggest pharma companies that will be household names to the biggest generics companies, but right across the globe. So we're really working with the full spectrum of customers in respiratory inhalation medicine. So of course, these products exist in the market today, and we're trying to improve the carbon impact of these products. So pricing, of course, is an important part. Patients don't expect and healthcare organizations don't expect to pay significantly more for these medicines for the future. But that has to be balanced with the amount of innovation and cost that goes into these changes. But we're also thinking about not just business this year or next year. It's what is going to be a real sustainable product for the decades to come. And the quicker we can make those transitions now, the longer term impact that this innovation and in investment can make on the globe, on the customer's carbon footprint, which is often significant as well as a big pharma company. So we can make a real difference across the supply chain and into the market.
Yeah, which is of course an important part of this whole decarbonization conversation, in that, you know, what we refer to as scope 1 and 2 are the direct emissions of companies, while scope 3 is the supply chain, and it's usually in the supply chain that we find the most carbon. So in your case, for the customers, you're their scope 3, you are part of their scope 3, and they depend on their suppliers decarbonizing, and that's where you play a role. But
well, exactly, and you know, our customers have very tough carbon reduction programs. They're being very ambitious, which is fantastic, but they can't achieve these objectives, these targets, without the collaboration right through the supply chain. And it's something that we've really tried to focus on, is how do we connect all the parts of the supply chain? How do we really be this, what could we call it, partner of choice to our customers, but also to help our tier 1, tier 2 suppliers to really kind of think about the whole supply chain, their impact on the supply chain, and really put in programs both up and down, how we collaborate together, how we can make these changes in a economically viable way, but also in a long-term partnership way that really helps all of us achieve our targets and ultimately helps the planet reduce its carbon impact.
And when you say that your customers have strict requirements when it comes to carbon, and that you are an important part of their ambition, is this across the board, or are you seeing different sort of expectations and, let's call it, maturity curves in terms of where it's push and pull? You know, where are they pulling you, and where do you sometimes need to push for customers to see the value in decarbonizing? And especially as we put a price on carbon, it becomes even more valuable.
We serve customers across the globe in all different markets and all different kind of levels of maturity. So of course we see different levels of maturity and ambition in our customers and in our supply chain as a whole. We really been working with the more ambitious customers to start with, to really get the momentum going on this change. We're making significant investments into our business to make sure the right capabilities and capacities are there for the kind of first movers, as we would think of them, and then really trying to roll this learning out into the supply chain. Really roll this learning out and help support our perhaps the follower customers over the next few years to really kind of craft and help support what is possible in their decarbonization journey.
And if we step back a little bit, you know, when we speak about sustainability or ESG, the past 12 months, they're usually negative connotations, or they're negative headlines in terms of whether it's corporate commitments or national commitments. Sustainability is sort of facing some headwinds. And at the same time, my understanding of your business and your industry, things are actually moving ahead. So maybe if we look beyond the noise, if we look beyond some of the headlines, there's actually positive momentum. Or do you feel that things are also changing in your industry, that there's been a sort of negative development with everything that's happening the past 12 to 24 months?
And I think because we're largely working in a very specific area, and the mission and the projects that we're working on have such a material impact to the products that we produce, the momentum is still strong. But I also think, sustainability or ESG for me and for mine and our business, it's not this separate thing. It's as we've gone on this kind of 18-month journey since we carved out, we started to learn a lot, and we started to realize that the decisions that we can make with the ESG toolbox are good business decisions. They're economical decisions. They really set us up with customers in a very good sphere of trust as well, about we're trying to do the right thing. We're not just here for this year or next year. We're here in it for the long term. And whichever project we decide to do today may not be the same as the project that we do in 10 years or 5 years. But to build those partnerships, build that trust in really being attentive to the market, as sustainability kind of, maybe the dial's moving right to left a little. How do we react to that? How do we continue to make our businesses sustainable? And when I say sustainable, I also mean building businesses for the long term, and building partnerships and supply chains for the long term. If we can build those in a strong and sustainable way, then I think this underlines something that we can do in the business, which is meaningful to us as a business, but also successful as a business.
Yeah. No, and I think that's exactly where we want to be on sustainability. That's kind of the sweet spot when it makes business sense, that we stick to this idea that, the business of business is business, but sustainability is actually part of that. And we're seeing also from this podcast, I've interviewed other industry leaders, and they're saying something similar. Below the sort of the surface or the noise and the headlines here, the business rationale includes sustainability, and that will continue unabated, especially at this sort of, when it's very granular, decarbonization and working on it. But if we talk for a second about regulation, because you're headquartered in the UK, but you're a global business, you're part of other businesses, global supply chains. From a regulation perspective, and here obviously a lot has happened on sustainability, first in the kind of general trend of regulating something that wasn't regulated. And then the past 12 months, especially in the European market, there have been some timeouts and some moving backwards, people would say, in terms of regulating what businesses are mandated to disclose and what is regulated, both in terms of not just sustainability, but even human rights and supply chains. How does this impact your business, the sort of the regulatory framework, whether it's for your industry or different jurisdictions?
I mean, in pharmaceuticals, regulation is not something that's new to us. This is something we work within a framework, a very disciplined framework of regulation, through to ensure and drive the right quality in medicines. So it's a very, very familiar arena, working in highly regulated industry. And the new regulations that come, say, outside of the pharma and into the ESG area, is something we know how to navigate. And we welcome the right regulations that lead to more sustainable products, products that continue to benefit patients' lives. I think the regulations that are coming through or are there now will and should lead to lower carbon products, lower carbon, for example, the low carbon propellants we were talking about earlier. We will see those roll out globally, locally, Europe. Eventually they will be global. It makes good economic sense as well, as the ESG sustainability sense.
And my guess is that regulation, let's say specifically around climate, that is sort of how do we measure emissions, would actually be good for you, because you spend a lot of time on this, and it would be in your interest that we have a regulatory framework similar to financial accounting, that we kind of agree on apples and apples across businesses and for investors and stakeholders, to know that the information you put out there is based on a framework, and that it is sort of accountable, So that I would think would be in your interest, that we sort of have an agreement on how do you measure emissions in your industry.
Yeah, fully agree. I think we have a standard on how we measure quality in pharmaceutical products, and I think we should have the right standards on how we measure our emissions, our businesses, our sustainability. I would welcome this. I know we're leaders in this space, and I would certainly welcome this kind of move to ensure that we're held to the highest standards.
I want to talk a little bit, Chris, about the culture and execution here in terms of how do you lead an organization generally, but also specifically around your sustainability mission. You have hundreds or thousands, I understand, employees, and comprised of engineers, operators, scientists, accountants, lots of different professions, lots of different people, lots of different cultures. Not just in the UK, but you're a global business. How do you sort of engage them, and how do you bring them into this mission where sustainability and emissions or reduction of emissions is sort of part of your business and your mission? Like, is there a secret sauce here? How do you approach this when you need all these different types of people from different walks of life, different professions to come together on this mission?
And I'm smiling. It's been a big learning this last year and a half. So sustainability is interesting to everybody in the business, but to embed it into the business, to embed it into what we do every day is, that's been a huge challenge. And anybody in the business listening to me would recognize the challenge and that we've been working on to do this. But I think I guess one of the tipping points for us this last 12 months was the realization that this is good for our business, not just an add-on, but really good for our business. And so by building our vision and mission around sustainability, by repeating the importance of the mission that we're on across the organization all the time, I think people start to believe in what we're doing, and that change starts to stick. I'm really lucky to have teams that are very curious, very inventive, that care deeply about the impact that we have as a company. And we have created an environment where challenge, where ideas are encouraged, that we really go on that kind of sustainable or embed that sustainable ambition in the organization. Part of the way we've done that is through our core values, but that realization that sustainability isn't a separate initiative. It's part of the decisions we're making every day. But to go from a new company last year, 18 months ago, and this year to publish our first ESG report and to submit and have validated our science-based targets is probably good evidence that we've really taken the challenge on culturally.
Right. And as you mentioned, you've signed up now to the science-based target initiative. So you're publicly committed to reach net zero, and you set sort of specific annual targets, and there's a lot of details in this, having worked with companies on this, and it kind of sets a roadmap. And to get there, obviously, you're going to need the help of you mentioned your customers in your industry, but again, your own workforce. You can't deliver this without sort of cross collaboration. How do you sort of any lessons learned in terms of other companies who are starting, who are maybe behind you on this journey? What advice would you give for other CEOs or leaders embarking on this journey? Maybe, let's say they're 1 year or 2 years behind you.
I think if you're serious about this mission, then you must embed it in your vision. From the vision and from the mission stems everything. So build this into your mission and understand the value of having that in your mission. And then engage as many people as you can at all levels. And I'm talking down into the workforce, but also up into the shareholders, stakeholders, board. This has made a huge difference to the company, is this kind of collaboration right through the organization to the highest level. So that would be probably my two top tips. Embed it in your vision and engage the stakeholders as often as possible. Make them realize, or they will start to realize the importance of this in your daily decisions.
Yeah. And you mentioned board and shareholders, and you are a privately held company, but with a majority owner, EQT, which is a private equity fund. And we've seen in recent years that it's not just the publicly listed companies or the big pension funds who have commitments and requirements on sustainability. It's also in the private markets, where large private equity funds that manage billions of dollars and have thousands of portfolio companies across industries, they're also requiring their portfolio companies, you being one of them, to deliver on ESG. And again, these private equity funds who get their money also from LPs or pension funds and others have an expectation to deliver on this. So what have you seen in this particular case where your owners are also setting requirements or demands on sustainability? What has that been like?
I'm very lucky that our shareholder EQT is passionate about ESG as well. I mean, they have supporting skill sets through their business that have been able to advise and guide. They have their own high standards from ESG and targets. We have appointed a board member specifically to oversee the ESG. So from a governance point of view, this is very clear, but also from a kind of passion through the company, this is very clear. So it's been a real help to have the board and the shareholders really engaged in driving this with us.
So you have that's interesting. You have a board and a specific board member also who kind of holds you accountable on this, who oversees from a governance, but I guess also as a partner and help you achieve results here. Mm-hmm. That's interesting that you have very specific oversight on ESG.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very useful as well. It's very useful as a sounding board, as a partner, both in the skill sets that EQT themselves offer for the business in terms of support, but that board member as well as a sounding board, as a challenge, and as a governor to our ESG is very good.
And Chris, if we look ahead the next 5 years, you said in your introduction that you think long term about your products and your sustainability mission. You need to plan ahead in terms of how you develop and design these products. What do you think are going to be some of the challenges and opportunities if we look 5 or even 10 years ahead?
I mean, we have already produced our first low carbon propellant products. And now we're working really hard on scaling this up. And so over the next years, we will see the capacity that we have increase rapidly, and the impact that we have on the respiratory inhaler supply chain should be marked. I think all the hard work that we've done the last couple of years in really kind of establishing our company again, we would really see this kind of momentum in shifting to sustainable inhalation devices. And I would really like to be recognized as a leader in this shift to sustainable advices, an advisor as well as a leader. I think we're looking for products that keep exceptional performance, but with those lower carbon footprints. I would like to continue with our collaboration work. I think we've been recognized for this, and I think deepening these partnerships right across the industry, across the pharma, biotech, right into the supply chains up and down, I think is going to be really important for the next few years. And I guess working towards our SBTI targets, which I said were validated this year. I think this is a real line in the sand for us. It's public commitment that we've made, and so staying on track and meeting these challenging targets is going to be something that I'm really looking forward to taking on.
Great. And if I can end with a final question, I'm going to ask you to provide, if you have any advice for, we have a lot of young professionals, a lot of listeners who are early in their career, or in some cases still completing their training, their education. What advice do you have for them in terms of working on sustainability in your industry or generally in business? Like, what's the skill set that's needed? What's the understanding that would be valuable for you if somebody was going to come to your company as a new employee? What are you looking for?
I'm looking for, look, there's so much opportunity in this space. There's so much opportunity in this business and other businesses. And I think I'm looking for people that are passionate here, that care here, and that are willing to grasp opportunities, that are willing to take that step and lean in to these kind of opportunities, to really engage with new innovative ways of thinking around sustainability. But I would say bring your passion and really lean into opportunity.
Chris Hirst, CEO of Bespak, thank you so much for joining us on Sustainable Edge.
It's a pleasure.
That's it for this episode of Sustainable Edge. If you found today's conversation inspiring, make sure to subscribe and leave us a review. It helps more sustainability leaders find us.